So, yeah, this is not a hairstyle. This is oh my god. So, yeah, one of the things I've gotta say is that my hairstylist, and no hairstylist I've ever had, has fully comprehended that I air dry my hair, and so they give me haircuts that, like, dry, kinda funny, but I like it. It's interesting. Hi, okay, how are you? So, all right, this one took a while for me to steer into. So it took me, I had one false start in this. Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty prolific right now. So, like, getting very focused to just sit down and do this was taking some, like, I don't know, it just took some time. It just took some time. So, yeah. Yeah. So, all right, what are we going to talk about today? So, today, yeah, it's really interesting. But um, I'm really like I'm noticing. Let's see, what was I going to say? Yeah, I'm noticing there's a little bit of a kind of lag right now, especially, and this is actually kind of relates to the production of the book, which was, I guess, the original intent to talk about while I was doing these, is that there are just um, there are just like periods of time where there was just like a prolific amount of like insight that would come through, and I happen to like, and yeah, and it's just kind of happening right now. So yeah, to say. I don't know what to say. Another thing is like one of the things I'm realizing is a lot of times when I'm coming on here, I'm like sweaty. And I remember one of my meditation teachers, Dan Brown, actually, who, for those of you who've done Parinama for beginners, are familiar with his exercise, his beautiful ideal family exercise that we do. That his teachings were really about how the level of concentration in meditation brings up heat, like the rajas. And so, yeah, so I've been sitting here. I don't actually read the chapter, but I read the header and I just kind of will sit until I can kind of land into a place where, like, I feel it like kind of like a through line, and it raises a lot of heat because it winds up being kind of more single pointed in its concentration in a particularly weird way. But we will talk more about that in the next chapter. One of the things actually that I'll say on this topic, because we're going to read about intuition and pattern recognition, and we're in the basics section for the sixth hub. And, um, and one of the thoughts that I had coming into this that actually has some juice to it is that, one of the things about meditation, and I almost like the word meditation sometimes just makes me laugh because it like feels like tech bro culture now, like a word, like it's like, yeah, like people like post how many hours they've spent meditating on LinkedIn. I mean, yeah, great. So anyway, so the thing about meditation is it's usually taught kind of like this sort of like no lube top down kind of thing where it's like just find the space, sit in silence, and and especially in like the like new age, there's this sort of like, I think my experience with it was there was really it was like it really wasn't well contextualized. So it was like, here's how to meditate. And even in the sutras, in the yoga sutras, there is like there is like the physical practice of yoga is only in like one or two of the sutras, and the notion is that the physical practice is actually, like, moving the energy out of your body so you can sit with yourself, and what what I would kind of, like, add on to that is that here, what we're doing is, like, when we're going from the ascending, from the bottom up, what we're doing is we're actually, like, with the softening and releasing and disintegration of division in ourselves in each of the hubs as we start to, like, soften that tangle as previously discussed. um, One of the things that happens is it's a lot easier to sit with yourself. And one could say, and this isn't how I view this, but in, what I won't say one should say, I'll say what I have found, what I find is that the more that noise gets it kind of exposed, evaporated, dissolved, it's like the pleasure, as Ken Wilber calls the simple feeling of being, is so much more easily accessible because that noise dies down, like shame, like I should be doing this, or they said this to me, and this is blah blah blah, and like what's going to happen if I don't do this and this and this and this, and it's like they're just kind of carrying the feelings of fear and shame and guilt and grief and anxiety and stuff like that, and self-doubt and criticism and all these kind of the adaptations. And when a lot of that is actually, and even when we get into a process where we have more curiosity about it, um it's kind of like the ability to like hold space becomes increased. And, so it's like time, space, quiet. We'll talk about it in the next hub. I just wanted to raise it right now because it just was topical for me. And so, yeah. But even, I mean, so even the thing is, but I would, and there's a caveat I want to bring in for that that's related to doing this work, which is that when we're having like an ascension or expansion or whatever you'd want to call it, like when we're exploring into something, and especially like the sixth hub, that kind of like barfy, what am I willing to see? um it's like the worst. It's the worst. I mean, honestly, it's the worst best. It's the worst best. It's really, I laugh, I kid, sort of. And one of the things with that is like when we get back to like talking about voltage in the earlier in part one, um, and even it's surprising to me in reading the book how that isn't it's like that isn't that terminology isn't used, that I didn't use that. But the thing about voltage is that what we're doing is we're actually like exposing ourselves to higher voltage because some of the adaptations are actually like blocking out like high voltage realizations about ourselves, like, so it's kind of like zap, like, and it's overstimulating. So sometimes when you're having, like a revelation or release, there's like a release. Crying is great for this, laughing is even great, sweating happens. There's a lot of like tremoring is really, like super common, but all like the physical symptoms, but there's also an emotional mental overload, and especially when our capacities are limited, like say in the second hub for strong emotions, and we're expanding those. Part of what we're doing is we're actually like there's a gating factor about like how much you can handle without getting overwhelmed. So this is like kind of one of the things that's really nuanced because it's like there's this sort of like um sattvic notion of meditation as being this sort of sustained state of presence. But in the development of it, it's like a lot can be coming out, and so there can be a gating factor of actually consuming content to block it, and this is like the filibuster of the fifth hub, which is the filibuster of needing noise. And, there's a lot of, like, shaming, like, "Oh, you're constantly getting stimulated," but if you can get yourself into a level of consciousness of seeing what you're doing with it, it, like, transforms the exercise in and of itself. Um, yeah, like, the thing where it's like, "Well, I should just be sitting in silence all the time." It's like, sure. It's like when it gets really nice, it's really nice. Like, it's not a thing where, like, I should do it. And any single action, anything that you do where you go, "Oh, I'm doing this thing that's, like, the wrong thing to be doing." Like, that's the flag. Anything where it's, like, being moralized or this is the wrong thing to do. I shouldn't be, watching so much TV. I shouldn't be drinking wine. I shouldn't be. It literally, like, crimps the hose for, like, curiosity because it presents itself as, like, a final answer on the matter, which is just like, "Yeah, you just shouldn't be doing it," which is like and then it's like end of conversation. It's like slamming the door in your own face, and instead being like, kinda like, "Okay," like, if you have, like it's like I shouldn't be, all those things. I'm such a lazy, I'm so shitty, I shouldn't have eaten that, I shouldn't have. All that stuff, is like the antithesis of what this is about. Every time there's something where it's like, well, I talked about this a couple a couple back, which is the thing about being like, I know how to do it and I'm not doing it. Like, that's another should, which is like, you actually don't know how to do it. If you know how to do it and are not doing it, it means you don't know how to do it. So it's like, go back to curiosity. That way doesn't fucking work for you. Like, that way, it's like, okay, well, if somebody were to, like, it's like, the analogies, I'm like, I'm not liking the ones that are coming up because 'cause they're just such conventional bullshit, um, but the thing is, like, anything where it's like this thing where it's like, I'm being it's like this kind of weird thing where you just don't it's like, that's me again being a fucking it's like that like, as soon as you see that arise, go, "Oh, oh, oh, that's it," like, like, apply curiosity. Apply positive assumption of positive intent. This is going back to having your own back. It's like, who needs enemies, right? Who needs enemies? You don't need enemies. Like, there's no enemy, like, that it's coming from inside the house. It's like this whole thing. It's like this anything where it's like, uh, you know I shouldn't be sitting around so much. I shouldn't be. It's just like, well, find like search it out, and so like, I guess what this is ultimately about, what I'm talking about is that, it's like, and also to what end, this thing, it's like, I shouldn't be doing this, and it's like, for what, like, what's the like, what is the holy I used to, when I had, like, issues with, like, food purity, I used to, like, spend a lot of time thinking about, like, what's the perfect food? What's the perfect nutritional food, Like, what's the perfect food? What's the food that and what's the worst food? What's the worst food, And when you start looking for it, like, you can't really find anything. You can't find something that's like, "This is the worst. It's potatoes." Like, potatoes, no. White bread's like, fuck it," like, whatever, like, um, and then kale and, like, spirulina or whatever. It's kinda like this weird thing where it's like, no, it's actually just kind of a it's way more nuanced than the idea that there's this kind of, like, perfect thing that you're supposed to wind up as, and that there'd be a diet where all you eat are these, like, perfect foods, where it's like, this mix, and this might feel like I'm losing the plot here on this, but what I'm getting at is like the thing about when you're doing things that are like you shouldn't be doing them, so called. It's like, well, what's this like idealized state of perfect um doing? What does that look like? And if you know anyone who you think is like a perfect doer, it's like, how happy do they seem? Do they have that like manic fucking smile, which is like the full like teeth smile? Oh my God. With the sad eyes. Just look for the receipts. Look for the receipts. And just curiosity, curiosity. Very sixth hub. Which is like apply curiosity, apply positive intent with yourself. And people will, like, and this is a throwback, but, where, I've had people asking, like, well, how do I see the best in other people? It's like, see it in yourself. It's just gilding to like look for the good in everyone else where you don't have that relationship with yourself. Like, it just doesn't, it's like, the Toni Morrison or Maya Angelou, like, who said, it's just like somebody doesn't love themselves. I don't trust them when they say they love me. Right? What a surprise. Like, Black women have been saying everything all along, Black people. So, but yeah, it's an inside job. It's an inside job. So, okay, let's talk basics here. I'm going to read about intuition and pattern recognition. And I just want to tell you right now, it is September 21st in Boston, and it's a really beautiful day. It is like a perfect sunshine, like 70-ish degree day. It's really nice. I'm looking at out the window right now. And my companions by my side. There's so yeah, pretty nice. No complaints. Okay, so basics. And as you know, if you have watched one of these before, if you've done Pranayama for Beginners, we have the learn the hub, understand interruptions and stressors, know the adaptations and holding patterns, and then expanding, increasing the dynamism in the hub. So here we're still learning the hub. So these are the basics of what the sixth hub contains, the components of our experience, the component of our self, of our identity. So, okay, so imagination and intuition are often associated with mystical qualities that distance us from trusting them, yet they have practical applications that support decision making and the organizing and understanding of information. A thought I had about intuition is like the actually I'm going to read it. The thought I had about intuition is the idea like intuition. Okay, no, I'm not going to say it yet. Okay. So intuition and pattern recognition, two sections here. So intuition. So okay. Boop. Let's do it. We use our experiences to predict the future. Intuition is pattern recognition using subconscious memories pulled from our inner image and information library. The gut feel of intuition is the subconscious within our body expressed through reflexes and responses. We use intuition to make decisions, yet not all the information we've collected is constructive. I discuss the influence and effect of bias on intuition later in this chapter. Okay, so we're born into bodies that grow into all shapes and sizes with differing abilities. As we progress through our development, we have experiences that program our perception, resulting in adaptations and holding patterns that often become belief systems. That's the tangle. This is combined with coded reflexes from hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution and survival. Reflexes that inform us where to look, what to look for, and what to expect. We consume astonishing amounts of information from our environment and over time learn to choose what we focus on. We assign meanings to these things and build our lived experience around those meanings. One way to influence the quality of your library is to take an active role in choosing what goes into it, which involves seeing images of people, bodies, and lives that push against biases and retrain our brains and bodies with humanized reflexes. How far back does this library go? Plato considered intuition to be the capacity of a rational mind to understand the true nature of reality. His philosophy of ana- anamnesis asserts that humans possess innate knowledge, perhaps acquired before birth. He described this pre existing knowledge as residing in the soul of eternity and posited that intuition happens when we become aware of this knowledge. He provided the example of mathematical truths and posited that they're not arrived at through reason. Instead, he argued that these truths are assessed through using knowledge present in a dormant form and obtained through our intuitive capacity. It is impossible to imagine bodies comprising material from the cosmos containing codes. What is it impossible? Is it impossible? Is it impossible to imagine bodies comprising material from the cosmos containing codes from the DNA of our ancestors? I don't know, maybe. Yeah. So I guess it's like, is it impossible to imagine bodies comprising material from the cosmos to be containing codes from the DNA of our ancestors? I guess it's like a little prompt that's like, if it's so improbable, like why not? I don't know. Maybe it's improbable. Um, yeah. Again, we're hardwired to view familiarity as safe. Intuition and instinct are felt in the body, but whenever possible, we should consciously explore our impulses before we act. Fear can masquerade as intuition. As an example, what some companies call culture fit is an undefined metric indicating that people feel safe with a candidate who is familiar to an already existing team. The so-called sixth sense of culture fit that many hiring managers apply to building teams is where biases can hide in plain sight. We internalize prejudice because in our daily lives we're subjected to a drip campaign of subtle and not so subtle racism, misogyny, ageism, and dehumanization. Since our pattern recognition is subconscious, it's worth noting the quality and content of the information going into our database, consumption of social media, advertisements, and the words and terms we hear, the preferences and beliefs of the people we spend time with all go into forming the world that we recognize as familiar and correct. Beliefs that we may consciously disagree with can slip in and exert influence from behind the veil of the subconscious. Yeah, I mean, it's like okay. I mean, I don't think that's like the final word on the matter. Um, yeah, it's like, all right. And then there's pattern recognition. Yeah. Yeah, I think there like so one of the things about intuition that I would make a note of, and I don't know if this comes up later in the book, is that one of the things is like when following our intuition, like the gut feel is the easier choice. I think that's one kind of pass-fail way to say, "Do I need to evaluate this?" Like, when it's kind of like, my intuition is saying I should do this thing that's gonna just return me to the familiar and safe. And this is like there's exceptions to this, such as, like, people that are creepy and, you know, that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about, like, this, like, just a thought on this. Um Is, like, anything that's kind of returning us to, like, a sense of, like, well, because intuition, like, that gut feel is usually inconvenient. It's like to do the right thing means I'm gonna have to, like, sort of separate from the status quo. Very key. Like, I think probably a better way to put it is, like, if your gut feel is forcing or, like, pushing for an action that moves against adaptations. I mean, that's your, like, what I'd call, your emblem talking to you, like, it's lighting you up. But yeah, I don't know, this is okay. I mean, it's alright. But, I think one of the things too, there's a lot. I really I recognize that when I was writing this, I was very, like, tuned in to this notion of, like, there's all this kind of, like, the abuse of intuition, the abuse of it. Because especially if you're in a position of power, that how easy it is to start to conflate sort of like your notions and your sense of things as being sort of your like the thing that's like, this like special thing about you and should not be questioned. Because one of the things about intuition is like, well, you can't really describe it. I just know, right? So it's like, so anything that's like, look, I can't tell you what the ingredients are. All I can tell you, is like, you know, it's like makes delicious cakes and cookies or whatever. Like it's really something where I don't know. I've seen it in like professional settings become incredibly dangerous for people because you get these monocultures of teams and it's like, well, they're not a culture fit. They won't fit in, It's like, look, we have a way of doing things here. Kind of thing. But there's also a thing too about like the consumption of things and one of like one really good example of, like, getting brainwashed is, like, the gendered terminology for strength, and that, like, a pussy as, like, referring to female, genitalia is, like, "Don't be a pussy." Like, that fucking bugs the shit out of me. I hate that term. I cannot stand it. It's like one of those things where you're getting, like, subconsciously, um, programmed, like, and to even, like, how misogyny is, like, slowly, kind of, like, dripped in, and, um, and then having balls is being strong. Do you have the balls to do that? And it's so backwards because it's like out of a vagina is like one of the most, like, extraordinarily painful human and, like, the exhibitions of, like, extraordinary strength, and balls are like I mean, like, what how the fuck are balls considered to be a sign of strength? I mean, like, you like I'm not even like, I don't even think it merits getting into detail on that. But this is the kind of stuff where it's like when we're thinking about like what we consume without questioning things and realizing it's like there's some like the subtext and the subcontexting of like what we're like sort of filling our notions of like how like the drip campaign of that impacts like our our connection with reality. Honestly, it's just connection with reality because that's like a fucking absurd. Yeah, there's some F-bombs there. Okay, so pattern recognition. So we see cycles of repeating themes and patterns when we look back on our lives. When we resolve a conflict or solve a problem, it can be surprising when the underlying theme reappears in our life, but this time a little more complex and a little more intense. As I'll discuss in chapter 10, nature is filled with repeating patterns. The golden ratio Fibonacci sequence we observe in nautilus shells, which steadily expand and grow larger, is also seen in flower petals, pineapples, and countless other examples in the natural world. Jackson Pollock's so called drip paintings of the late 1940s and early 1950s were likened to what appeared to be the artistic skill of toddlers. But in 2002, Scientific American, in it, I'm there's some reading issues today too, but but a 2002 Scientific American article by Richard P. Taylor, Order in Pollock's Chaos, reports that computer analysis revealed Pollock was creating fractal patterns similar to those formed in nature by trees, clouds, and coastline. The subliminal appeal Pollock had accessed was the appeal of the patterns of the rhythms of nature. Nature, patterns, whatever, whatever. Yeah, I feel like that's okay. I mean, I feel like this is I mean like anything here, these are really like massive topics. Um and and the exploration of them could be, sort of a lifetime of infinity. Um yeah, I think yeah, I don't know. I think these are okay. I don't consider these to be the greater presentations of the Pareto method, but they point enough. They, they're serviceable. They're serviceable. The other topics that we'll get into for basics is ideation, which is capturing inspiration, curiosity, looking, being seen, and then the themes are myth and meaning, rite of passage, the hero's journey, and then dreams, memory, decision making. Yeah, it's a good chapter. This is a good chapter. Yeah. I know it's kind of an interesting thing, and I actually stand by this, which is kind of this notion of like intuition as being both important and also really worthy of exploration because of how dangerous it can be, especially if you're in a position of power. And this can be a parent, this can be a boss, this can be a socio economic structure, culture, whatever, which is that you get to say what is what because like it makes sense to you somehow, right? And of course, intuition is like has a significant value, but because we have so many inputs that are interrupting and stressing and maladapting and distorting our notion of who we are, of who other people are, um, dehumanizing, like slow dripping these like notions of other people and ourselves, that our ability to have just pure intuition has been interrupted and stressed. I mean, I guess I mean, and I don't think that you can talk to anyone. I mean, I would imagine like native people that are living in nature have the capacity, would have a great I mean, I'm just imagining this, just like me talking out of my whatever, but um but maybe no, I don't know. I don't know. Actually, I would imagine that living in nature and not consuming a lot of these inputs would like positively impact your connection to intuition. Um, but it's just a caution, it's just a caution. Intuition, it can be a really useful tool, but most of the time when it's useful, it's pointing us away. It's like, from the option, so it's like being in a really bad relationship with a person, and it's really inconvenient to have to, like, make a change in that, leave or whatever. A job, a dynamic, whatever, like a situation, just like when there's a sense that this is bad for me. But, I don't know, there's a refinement in this that doesn't that I am not representing here in this. There's a much a broader and better exploration of this that I think could be made. Um, so yeah, yeah, there's something, and I'm not gonna do it. It's not really interesting me. I feel like the sort of the where I'm at with it right now feels like okay, but I would be interested if anybody else has anything if you wanna do the work to think about it. So, anyway, so I think that's it. I think that's it for now. Um, yeah. As always, I'm just so grateful for having you here. Thank you so much. And um, yeah, any thoughts, ideas, I'm always willing and not even willing. I'm always enthusiastic. I welcome the opportunity to answer any questions. Folks, I get yeah, I get communication and I don't mind right now. Like it because it's like an email and then in text, voicemail, chats, different socials and stuff. I actually don't mind right now. I'm not gonna make any, like, direction on that. But, yeah, but I will say, one thing, yesterday, it was like a nice note, was I was noticing with the folks who are communicating with me as it relates to Parinoma, is the how widely expansive the application of this is. Like, it's just, and this is part of the thing where, this is not a consumer product, and it's something where yeah, it's not, this isn't a marketing funnel. Like, if you're doing this, I'm not trying to get you to buy the next product here or, go do my mastermind or buy my online course. What I'd really like to encourage is that you're finding things in the world. And like, so Kristen, I think one of the things that's great is like finds, all of a sudden the algorithm in YouTube will point her to, I guess don't think she minds me saying this, finding like an answer to what is arising. It's like a really like this starts to happen where there's like a very natural divining rod that'll find these things. And that folks like you're building your own practice around this, like, and by practice I mean like your support team, like who are the people you're reading, that you're forming your life as an inside out action, that this is not a thing where I'm like you need to follow what I'm offering. I'm telling you that if this isn't self-help bullshit. Like, this is literally like these are the kind of like the codes, which is if you apply them, you're living from the inside out and you're building your life. You're building your life and in a way that is like uniquely characteristic of your expression of it. So it's finding, so a lot, so really common, it's been really great is that people have found therapists, people have found uh, you know just people that like they really connect with, like people, and like just this ongoing process of reaching out into the world and finding finding the right tools and people and resources and things, and even, it like that's the thing. I want to, and that's something I want to emphasize is like I love that. Like that's something that I'm um yeah, yeah, you're not in a marketing funnel. And Another thing is that, like, yesterday, I made people who are, like, having, like, business outcomes. Like, yesterday, I had somebody, like, shift it had a business development outcome that was, like, changed, like, had a material impact on their company. So like, so the reaches of applying this stuff is just it's so practical. And that's really, like, and that's one of the things too where it's like, as far as, even when I was writing the book, it was like, "What's this about?" And I remember my editor was like, "It's about everything." And it's about everything. And, and there was this time where she said, I was at a party and people were asking what I'm working on right now. And she was like, which is common small talk, for her. It's like, "Oh, what are you working on?" And she said, "Well, I'm working on this book." And she said, "Well, what's it about?" And she goes, "I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but I think when it comes out, you need to buy it." And I remember when we hung up from that call, I was like, that's exactly it. And, I'll tell you, in like part of the world that I've like sort of previously resided in a very commercial world, that and even my own self, I had imbibed a lot of this where that was like, well, we're gonna have to work our way out of that. We're gonna have to do, it's like, well, we're gonna have to at some point solve that. And if anything, I feel more strongly about that, where it's like, that's the gift. People give the book to people they love a lot, and that's one of the things that is also, like, where people give this as a gift in a very particular loving way to the people that they care about, and without saying this is what this is, like, and it's, like, not like a directive, like, this'll blah, blah, blah. It's like, this will actually unlock, like, or give you, not unlock, it'll give you access. It'll give you access to parts of it, to, like, to aspects of yourself. You'll be able to access and activate like, yourself in ways that are extraordinarily familiar. So one of the things is that it's interesting that it's like, when we talk about, like, the sense of safety, like, being how fear operates, one of the things is, like, in working with that fear is that the reconciliation and the recognition of what is accessed through this process is extraordinarily familiar. And what will happen is, as we do this, it's like, and even exploring the different age groups, like, you're finding parts of yourself often, like, or folks, or myself, folks, others are finding, like, reclaiming parts of themselves that it's like, oh my gosh, I remember that. And, like, it kind of reintegrates. So it's, like, very familiar. So there's, like, an occupying of states that had previously been sort of, like, hushed, abandoned, kind of diminished, etcetera. So I just yeah, that's that on that. And also, I'm really open, especially anything, that goes in comments, I'll respond to any comment. Um, that, anything that I can, like, I wanna be helpful. Actually, let me kind of pull back on that. Um, I think it's best to try to kinda to go, so instead of being like, "Well, what do I do next?" Which people ask me, and it's kinda like, I'd actually, my prompt would be, ask yourself. Do that exploration, ask yourself, say, and just be like, "I actually don't know." I like, and the whole key thing is, like, just to be like, "Yeah, I don't know." And I'm kind of okay with that, but I would it's like, I'm asking the question, this kind of, like, super receptivity. So it's like, if something arises, to say, "What is the next move on that?" How do I stop hurting? How do I expand what I'm doing, like the capacity of like, my business, my inspiration, my relationship, my home, like whatever. It's just having some inquiry and curiosity into it. So, all right, that's all she wrote this time for real. This time for real. So, anyway, I love you so much, and I'm so happy that you're here. And I'll see you next time. Bye.